Working Cows Podcast, episode 48.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast. Just back with another episode. Before we get into our guest today, I wanted to make you aware of something pretty cool that happened in my hometown. A young lady that attends the church where I'm pastor was elected homecoming queen, which is cool in and of itself, but this young lady is also autistic, and it was just a really proud moment for me as a Belle-Fourche native to see the students of Belle-Fourche kind of teach all of us in Belle-Fourche about a little bit about what true beauty is like. So if you want to check that story out, head on over to facebook.com/workingcows. It will be pinned there as the pinned story for a little while. So if you want to check that out, facebook.com/workingcows. We'll leave it up there for you to read and check that story out. Pretty cool stuff. So on to our guest today. Troy Hadrick is a rancher from north central South Dakota near Fulton. He has been using GeneMax testing in his herd, and I wanted to talk to him just a little bit about what he has been accomplishing through that. So Troy, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on today. Appreciate the chance to share a little bit about our cattle herd and what we've done with it over the last several years to really try and improve our genetics.
So you guys, how long have you been using GeneMax testing on your operation?
So we started back in 2014 for the first time. Prior to that, a few years prior to that, we had set out to sort of figure out how we could increase revenue, make our cattle more valuable, essentially, without having to just, simply by running more numbers, I guess. And of course, remember coming off the drought of 2012, feed was tough and pasture was tight. And so we were trying to figure out other ways to get, instead of getting bigger, figure out how we get better. We decided to try and produce cattle that we could market on a quality-based grid system, and which essentially means that we're trying to get cattle that it will grade in the certified Angus beef and prime. And so we set out on that direction with our genetics we were using. Before we even got the first set of data back, started kind of looking at some of the DNA tests that were out there, and specifically looking at the Zoetis test, talking about their GeneMax and Focus and GeneMax Advantage. And so it was pretty interesting to look at maybe the potential of the test. I think, at the beginning, we were still trying to figure out how exactly we would utilize it. And that actually, it took me a while. There's obviously a cost involved in the thing, and you get this data back, and there's always, I guess, the fear. It's kind of easy sometimes to spend that money, and then, you get this sheet of paper in the mail and it says, here's your test results. And I didn't want to just take that and say, oh, that looks good or that looks bad or whatever, and throw it in the file cabinet, right? And then just kind of walk away. It's like, we really, we got to, when we get this information, we have to know how to utilize it. And so I kind of spent quite a bit of time trying to figure that out before we ever took a tissue sample on a calf even. And so once I kind of got that figured out and kind of squared that away in my head, then we moved forward with starting to use the test.
And how have you guys changed what you're doing? What's different now on your cow herd or in your management than it was before you started testing?
So prior to testing and prior to, me and my two cousins taking over management of the ranch back in 2012, we'd been a pretty traditional cow herd where we weaned our calves. We had a backgrounding yard here, so we would background our calves for a while.